CNN's historic presidential debate just 3 days away. And while Biden does mock debates, Trump is avoiding traditional debate prep, instead opting for informal meetings with senior advisors and asking his supporters for debate advice.
How should I handle him? Should I be tough and nasty? Or should I be, she'd say no, should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak?
And the former president also pushing baseless claims about Joe Biden, likely in an attempt to temper expectations.
He's sleeping now because they want to get him good and strong. So a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass, and they want to strengthen him up.
All right, CNN's Kristen Holmes is in West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Kristen, which is it going to be? Is it going to be tough and nasty Trump or nice and calm Trump?
Well, Manu, if anyone tells you that, what they think it's going to be, they're likely lying to you, because the only person who actually knows how they're going to behave on that stage is Donald Trump. Now, when it comes to letting Biden speak, I will say the debate rules will mute Donald Trump's mic. So it's not going to be a traditional kind of debate that you've seen Donald Trump do, where he continually tries to interrupt the person that he's sharing the stage with. But as you mentioned, Donald Trump's team says that they avoid even using the word preparation when it comes to Donald Trump and this debate. Instead, they say they are hosting policy sessions. They've had more than a dozen where they've gone over issues like immigration, like abortion, particularly democracy, how to handle what he has said in the past about that riot insurrection on January 6th. These are all things that Donald Trump is taking into account. His team also says that his various appearances in rallies, taking questions and interviews, as well as from the crowd and other events, that's all part of this quote-unquote debate prep. But whether or not Donald Trump is going to stay on message, which most of his advisors, allies, and anyone who is rooting for Donald Trump really hopes that he will do, again, will remain to be seen. You heard him kind of trying to lay out platforms this weekend and in events last week, but then also going off script. Take a listen.
But I said, Dana, I have an idea for you to make a lot of money. You're going to go and start a new migrant fight league. Migrants, only migrants. And then at the end of the year, the champion migrant is going to fight your champion. And I hate to tell you, Dana, I think the migrant might win. That's how tough they are.
Now, obviously, immigration is something they've talked about in these policy sessions, but I would venture to say that that kind of language and rhetoric is not something that they went over. And they're talking about answers when it came to migrants. Donald Trump, again, is going to say whatever he wants to say once they come on that stage. But I will tell you, you mentioned this, talking about tempering expectations. We have heard from a number of surrogates who have really tried to amp up this rhetoric, tempering expectations. We heard from Doug Burgum on our air over the weekend saying that that Biden was a formidable opponent. We also heard just now from J.D. Vance on a podcast saying the bar was set too low for Biden. So you can hear what the messaging is coming out of Trump's orbit right now, Manu.
Yeah, all right. Kristen Holmes of West Palm Beach, Florida, tracking all things Trump. Thanks for that. And as Trump prepares for the debate, he's not shying away from his grievance-fueled rhetoric. Here he is on Saturday before a group of Christian conservatives.
And I have the wounds all over my body. If I took this shirt off, you'd see a beautiful, beautiful person. But you'd see wounds all over me. I've taken a lot of wounds, I can tell you. More than I suspect any president ever.
He told them he's been treated worse than Abraham Lincoln, who, of course, was shot in the head. Our great reporters are back. Okay, so this is obviously different than a rally because there's a live audience there. He tends to feed off the audience. He goes off script, he rambles and the like. This time, he's going to be constrained by the time limits and the fact that there'll be a muted mic and there will not be a live audience. So you're talking to the Trump campaign. What are you hearing about how he plans to approach this?
Well, it was interesting when he asked the audience at that Philadelphia event if he should be nasty or nice. You could hear one person scream out in the crowd, "Be presidential." And there are a lot of people in his
One person.
One person, correct. A lot of people love the red meat.
Yes.
But it's clear that there are people around Donald Trump who is hoping that this stage brings some gravitas and some remembrance that this is the highest office in the country that he's running for. At the same time, at that speech, he also went on a long explanation for why he cusses so much in his speeches these days, even though Franklin Graham doesn't want him to. So but the tempering of expectations that we have been seeing from his campaign lately has been quite dizzying, and it doesn't necessarily project confidence going into this debate that he has the upper hand over Biden.
In some ways, Trump has a low bar to clear, too, because if he acts presidential or avoids some of the things that he says, that could go over well with a lot of voters who have not been paying attention, have not focused on everything that Trump has said over the last 4 years. I mean, he frankly forgot all the controversies, low information voters. So in some ways, he has a low bar to clear, but he could trip up by getting back into some of his petty grievances.
This is going to be one of those the best laid plans kinds of debates. I mean, we'll see both of the campaigns are trying to prepare their candidate to be the best they can be. And you're right, both have fairly low bars, in part because on Biden's side, because they spent how many months talking about how senile and how frail he was and how he's not going to be able to do this. But when it comes to Trump, yes, if he gets up there and doesn't, take the bait.
Which Biden will try to
exactly, and both
out.
of these candidates are prone to taking the bait and to going off the rails if they're triggered. And so, I mean, we'll see.
I think what'll also be interesting is actually what he says on the policy, right? Which is
Right.
that I'm sure Jake and Dana are going to try to pinpoint him more on abortion. How exactly does he handle those questions? How exactly does Trump answer questions about his rhetoric about migrants? I mean, including what you just played, saying that he proposed a migrant fighting league. And the mics being cut off could very well benefit Trump just as much as they benefit Biden, because of the fact that in the 2020 debates, Trump was seen in focus groups afterwards that I sat in on. They called him a bully. They called him rude. They thought he was unprofessional. And cutting off the mics potentially makes it so he doesn't appear or come off that way.
But don't you
this
think
time
the
to
criminal cases are going to be more of fodder for making Trump angry, right? Because we know how angry he was for this conviction. I'd be shocked if that is not a question in this debate. That seems to be, not saying this, you're absolutely right, there will be abortion questions, there will be discussions about that and potentially about that migrant fighting league. But it seems the criminal cases are something he takes very personally.
Yes.
And could be potentially tough for him to answer.
And as we talk about Trump on message versus not on message, obviously his advisors want him to say things like he did on Saturday in Philadelphia when he was talking about the economy and about Joe Biden.
Less than 4 years ago, our border was secure. Inflation was nowhere to be seen. The world was at peace. They respected your country. And America was strong like never before. Now, under crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, the world is in flames. Our border is overrun. Inflation is raging. Crime is out of control. Europe is in chaos. The Middle East is exploding. Iran is emboldened. China is on the march.
I mean, that is the Trump that his advisors want. How does Biden's team respond to that?
I mean, it's interesting. Trump and Biden do not share many characteristics between one another, but one that they do is going off script from what their advisors want. And I think that's so much of what this debate is going to be about. Trump's advisors want him to speak like he was just speaking, trying to prosecute the case against Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's advisors are going in with the certain things that they want him to say. But both men frequently veer off script, and advisors have to clean up after both of them often. And so today, on Thursday, that's going to be a test, I think, for both of them in getting under each other's skin and getting them off of whatever preparations they came into that debate trying to focus on.
Speaking of going off script, also from Saturday in Philadelphia.
You know what the Green New Scam is? No water in your faucets. You ever try buying a new home and you turn on, they have restrictors in there. You want to wash your hair? Well, you want to wash your hands. You turn on the water and it goes drip, drip. The soap, you can't get it off your hand. So you keep it running for about 10 times longer. You're trying. The worst is your hair. I have this beautiful, luxuriant hair. And I put stuff on. And I put it in. Lather. I like lots of lather because I like it to come out extremely dry because it seems to be slightly thicker that way. and I lather up, and then you turn on this crazy shower, and the thing drip, drip. And you say, I'm going to be here for 45 minutes. They put restrictors, and they put them on in places like here where there's so much water you don't know what to do with it. You know, it's called rain. It rains a lot in certain places. But no, their idea, you know, did you see the other day? They just I opened it up and they closed it again. I opened it, they closed it. Washing machines to wash your dishes. There's a problem. They don't want you to have any water. They want no water.
Plumbing rents. That's a throwback. That and windmills.
Yes.
But right, it's these things when exactly what Matt was talking about. When either Biden or Trump in that case gets off script, goes into these completely untranscribable diatribes, that could be problematic, and is exactly what Trump advisors don't want to happen. One thing is a rally audience.
Yeah.
Another thing entirely for a presidential.
But I was at that rally, and he spoke for 80 minutes. It was much closer, the entirety of the 80 minutes was much closer to that clip than the first clip.
All right, we'll see how he deals with that on Thursday. Of course, he'll be confined by time limits and the moderators, but, you know, he can say what he wants when he's asked.